Let's talk about MSF. Let's talk about all of us. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things Copley does. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Like and subscribe.
What's going on, everybody? Taco Shooter here with another fantabulous edition of Let's Talk About It, featuring the MSF Player Voice, MPV. I don't know, is that what we call you? MPV? MSF PV? All right, my microphone keeps attacking me. We'll keep that in. That's fine. All right. Joining us this week for this Let's Talk About It, for this special edition of a big update to the MPV is EVDOG, of course, Sevi, and for the first time, BetaRayBill, who many of you may know from many editions of Community Crucible, where he comes in and tears me a new booty hole on the regular, verbally.
No, you're confusing me with Dorky.
No. That's just good times. That's just good times. Like, you can't get mad at what a Canadian says because it's not real. All right, so thank you for joining us again. And I gotta fix this arm. All right, we're just gonna hold it. That's fine. That's better. All right. So thank you for joining us again. Really appreciated it. It was appreciate it. It was a great time last time. And before we get started, so want to start with Sevi and really just sort of, again, just a quick recap of what got us started and where we came from to get this movement rolling for those that may not be aware.
So this actually was started by Dorky and EVDOG. Dorky got a little bit busy with life, and so it ended up being EVDOG kind of handling things, and then somehow he roped me into assisting. Because Ev is very persuasive.
So that's
a lot of us were like,
oh yeah, no. I just wanted to pause you there for a quick second because that was literally the last question that I had marked on my little box, and we're just going to go right at it right now. But before Sevi, before you continue with that, I want to shoot this over to EVDOG, and I wanted to know, like, what are your thoughts on Dorky Dad? Many of you know him on Twitch and YouTube. What are your thoughts on Dorky Dad completely abandoning the movement that he essentially gaslit to get going? He really sort of revved you up.
Can I suggest that it's kind of like Canada starting a brush fire and then sending all the smoke to someone else?
Absolutely. Totally expected.
It sure seems familiar. I feel like this message has played before. But how did that make you feel when he basically got you to do everything and left you standing by your lonesome only for Sevi to come and pick up the pieces?
Well, I was like, thank God for Sevi. But as far as Dorky, I wasn't surprised. He's Canadian.
Yeah, you can't trust him. You can't trust them. Yeah. Fun fact: Canadians have this persona that they're the nicest people in the world, but you heard it here first. From EVDOG and Sevi and Beta that they're all liars.
And anybody that watches South Park knows they talk out of both sides of their mouth.
Absolutely. All right, so Sevi, let's throw it back over to you. If you could, sorry, I had to get the little jab in. I just thought it would be much later.
I know, I opened that perfectly for you.
Yes.
Way to go on completely derailing the conversation.
No, it's not a derail. We always like to make fun of Dorky. That's great.
So, Ev and Dorky started this. Dorky got really busy with life. He needed to step away for a little bit. And I happened to accept a promotion at WPF, and they brought me into the server. And I saw what they were doing, and I was just like, if this does not fix the game, then, man, I'm going to have to leave, because I had already almost quit back in October. and was barely hanging on by a thread. Mostly it was just I didn't want to leave my alliance mates. I lead my own alliance, so the bonds that I had with them were pretty strong. And somehow Ev talked me into becoming co-lead on this movement.
Perfect.
Ev is a persuasive man. But a lot of us are just we're really frustrated with the state of the game. Like, we know how good this game could be, but the direction that the developers have been taking it in has has really driven it into the ground, and we don't want to see that direction continue. We think that with some changes, if they start listening to the player base and to the envoys more, that this could be a much better and much more enjoyable game for everyone.
Yeah, and Marvel Strike Force is notable in that, you know, it did just celebrate its 5-year anniversary, and the average statistic for mobile games is something like they live for, I think it's like 2 or 3 months. Like, it's a very, very short period of time, and then the average player plays a game for 3 days before they delete it. And so for a game that has been played by this many people for this length of time, that's still growing, just maybe not necessarily in the direction that many of us are happy with. It is a notable achievement, which, you know, it wasn't, in my opinion, celebrated very well for such a significant milestone. But that's neither here nor there. So EVDOG, where are we today with the player movement versus when it started?
I think we're in a much stronger place. We, as Sevi said, we kind of started as just a council of the top alliances that were in what we call the player experience server, and that server wasn't operating the way we wanted it to, and we didn't think it had the voices weren't as broad as we wanted them to be. So as we said, we started our own little thing, and we've grown to about 5,000, over 5,000. We're really at about 5,600 of what I think are the top players, active players in the game, and about 400 alliances. So it's a really strong movement right now in terms of, I think that everybody's on the same page in terms of they want to see things get done and are very united in that motion, in that movement.
No, absolutely. I think I was shocked at how fast the server grew. I mean, it blew up faster than you know, any Discord server that I've ever witnessed. I mean, I know there's Discord servers with a lot more people in it, but that was the fastest I've seen one go from 0 to let's get real in ever. You know, I mean, I'm still relatively new to all of this, to Twitch, to Discord, and everything. You know, it feels like I've been doing this forever now, but it's only been a couple years, and you know, I didn't have much to do with Discord before I got into Marvel Strike Force, so a lot of it's still relatively new to me. Now, Beta, last time we were talking about Let's Talk About It. I mean, we were talking about the MSF player movement on Let's Talk About It. You weren't a member yet, and you know, you and I've you know, developed into a very strong relationship where we make fun of Ceci a lot and various other people. And when we first started talking about this, you weren't thrilled about the idea of being involved with the movement. What changed?
I think my apprehension in the past has been my own feelings towards prior movements when I've seen them come to fruition, that I think they were very singularly focused on a particular objective, and then they sort of disappeared or dissipated after that objective was either given up on or achieved, and it was more of an adversarial relationship between the player base, or the ones executing it, versus Scopely or Boundless or whoever you want to call them now. And so I think for me it was it was not an approach that I agreed with in the past. And so I had, on my own, spent some time and effort trying to work with folks at Scopely over the course of the past 18, 20 months or so myself. And also felt the same frustrations that everybody else does in terms of progress or lack thereof, or the issues that were at hand. And so when EVDOG and Sevi and I were first chatting, my approach was I sort of wanted to just give them some guidance and input in terms of my experiences. And then it's, as somebody said in chat earlier, it's very easy to get conscripted by EVDOG.
So that confuses me, because I learned very quickly that EVDOG does a very good job of commanding attention in Discord through his unending typing. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. It's meme worthy and has been made into many memes. EVDOG typing, the ... and it just goes on for days and days at times, it seems. So I just assumed he slept on a keyboard. So it was like he was constantly pushing the space button.
Well, it's funny because I've heard this reputation, and I can't say I've experienced it. That's not an open invitation to pass it my way now, F. But the thing that was different for me was that there was a serious commitment here to a long-term play. So it wasn't about trying to enact change or get some things to improve. It was that this is a movement that's not going to go away, right? That it's an opportunity to engage with Scopely for the long term, and that we know there's a lot of issues now. There will continue to be issues in the future. It's just the nature of software. And that this is a foundation or a way to engage with them in a tighter way so that you can help steer the ship for the long term. And I always use the analogy, like if you've got a cruise ship, it only takes a minor little bit of change, like 1 degree, to make that ship go all the way from heading to New York versus heading to Europe. You know, and so just little incremental changes that this team can pull off will be a welcome change here. So I think for me it was that, and that there was a lot of support behind this, and that it was not about nastiness or bitterness within the community, but it was actually very focused on what are the real issues that everybody's frustrated with.
Yeah, no,
and how do we solve them?
I agree. I think that's, I think the one thing that sort of attracted me to the movement in particular was the inclusiveness. Because I've in my streams and videos, I talk a lot about mental health, and I talk a lot about what makes a game successful. And at the end of the day, games are not successful without the top spenders, and games are not successful without the free to play, and games are not successful with everything in between. Like, it takes the perfect amount of all of those for a game to live to be 5 years or longer, for a game to outlive the 3-month average lifespan. And so as far as inclusiveness goes, really want to shoot this back over to EVDOG. So I think it's easy for Scopely to say, because one of the big talking points for this has been to get that what do you call it? Players Council, right? So it's easy for Scopely to say, we're happy to listen to what the pay-to-play players listen to, because they essentially always have. They may not have always given the best response back to the input, but there's been a pay-to-play voice within the company for a long time. How are we able to sell to Scopely that the free-to-play voice is just as important and just as impactful and deserves to be listened to?
Well, if I was being 100% honest, and I mean, maybe I get in a little trouble for this, that was the fight. I think in talking to the devs, they are, like you said, they already had the pay-to-play voice and the CC voice, and convincing them that they needed to include the whole community, there was a little pushback on it. Not in a no, we definitely won't do this sort of way, but in a definitely they questioned me on the benefits of it. And I think it was I've had the thought in my head that no matter what, I was going to bring this in as a whole community. I wasn't going to let them break us up. I wasn't going to let them divide us. I wasn't going to let them, say, oh, this part of the community is important and this part of the community isn't. We just came in as an all or nothing sort of option. So,
Yeah.
and that's what they had to that was the only option really they had to deal with.
Yeah, no,
And
I
that's
mean,
how I would like to keep it.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, so the free to play experience, especially the tenured free to play experience, that the people that have been those day one, day two players that have seen this game go from whatever it launched with, few dozen characters to, I don't know, like 983 characters or whatever we have now, 50 blitz teams. It's a lot, right? So their experience and their voice is just as important, and they are the legs of the game. I mean, without the free-to-play players bumping the numbers up and driving more people to come in, because there are so many bodies, you don't find the dolphins and the whales and the krakens and get those other players to come in, because that's what draws them in. They're friends.
I also think, I mean, I don't know if it shows in their numbers, but I think that free to play is not really used properly. I think that the free to play section of the community is a lot less than people think, like people that absolutely spend nothing. I think that a lot of people micro spend and call themselves free to play.
Agree.
But,
Agree.
But I don't think the free to play.
I don't have a problem with them calling themselves free to play, though. Me
neither. I'm just saying that that there's value in even the people there's monetary value even though they're calling themselves free to play, because they do spend, and they can, and in our focus groups where we ask just like for us from a Kraken point of view, I don't think there's very few Krakens like Beta or Tadano that are born Krakens. In my experience, most whales grow into Krakens when they hit the top of their of the competition. I think it's the same with free to play. Can go to can be changed into rare or mid spenders if the game was good enough to let them, if the offers made sense to them. So that's something for them to think about.
Well, I think too, if I can add real quick too.
Yeah.
I can't, and Taco, we've talked about this before. I can't even imagine what the new player experience is anymore for this game.
It's got to be overwhelming. I
can't even relate.
It's got to be overwhelming.
Exactly.
That's so many characters.
People about that. There's a lot of feedback, but most of it is negative. They just feel overwhelmed because there's so many characters to catch up on. There's a lot of bottlenecks for them.
Yeah. No, I can.
So, I mean, I can't even imagine that. And then, so getting that, this is why the inclusion is important, because getting that perspective, getting the perspective of, like you said, the free to play adjacent, is, we always talk about it, the mid-level spenders and all that. They're all different perspectives and they're all valid. And while I may see that things that I experience or that we experience at a certain level, ultimately somebody down the road will experience similar things, that's down the road. And so it's more important to address more of the concerns they have shorter term than longer term.
No, I couldn't agree more. And, just talking about what EVDOG was talking about with the casualness of the increase in spending that players do, I can, I'll use myself as an example. When I was in my first first alliance, Claws of Wolverine. You know, of course, everybody drops into an alliance, and then you go into your first alliance. And so that was Claws of Wolverine, which I always thought was funny because the acronym is COW. But I spent my time chasing the top player in the alliance, right? So from a pay perspective, so I wasn't spending a lot. I was spending a little bit. I was definitely spending more than others, but I was spending a little bit. And then I, went into my next alliance, Savage Unicorns, and again, I wasn't the top player when I got there. So now I'm again chasing that top spot, and I was there through a merger, and then I came into Sex Panther, and of course I see Beta. And now I'm chasing Beta, and that that got scaled back because of a few spending events that I was very disappointed with, and decided to reallocate some spending to other endeavors. But that's neither here nor there. But that's sort of that path, though, right? So that's that path that you're talking about, that you just casually grow into doing more and more and more and more, and a lot of times you don't even realize it. So you just never know. You just never know. You're comfortable with your sales perspective to Scopely on getting that free to play player experience included, and I'm curious if they came back to you and said, we're super down with the player council, but we don't want free to play experience on it. What's the response?
That's not an option.
That's not an option for us.
Beautiful.
I just don't see, like, they would shoot themselves in the foot. I don't think it's an option that we can take and actually be a successful players council.
Agreed.
Because it just wouldn't work. Even if we wanted to, it just wouldn't work. Once you have a part of the community that just feels like they're not being represented, it's not a community if it's not everybody.
Yeah.
And
that's how we feel about it.
I think
absolutely.
I think if you go back to something that Sevi said earlier, it becomes a focus group then, as opposed to a players council.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, if they want to do focus groups in addition to the players council, we're fine with that. If they want to do we'll do a Kraken focus group and a mid-spender focus group and another focus group in addition to the player council on their own, we're good with that. But I think that the players council itself has to have a little voice from everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as far as the movement goes from where it started, is there anything that you've seen progress on from the initial message that was sent out to Scopely until this most recent one? Has there been progress made that you're comfortable talking about or can talk about?
Yeah, let me just start by saying that there's a lot that I can't talk about in specifics, but I can say that I think the devs that we are talking to are making a very honest, sincere effort to work with us. Like, their communication with us is on point. If we ask them for something, they come back most of the time right away. They address us all the time. And even the first dev letter that we did, when they came back with the answers, they were very convinced that those answers were going to satisfy us. Like, they were excited to hear our response to it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we came back with we didn't like it, I think it was surprising to them. But in their defense, they were open to listening to why it wasn't acceptable to us. you know, and that's the process, right? That's the process. Like now they know. So, you know, in that's why we put it back in this new dev letter, and they're expecting it back in this new dev letter because we told them we were going to put it back, and they told us they would do a little bit better. So we'll see.
Now, has there been communication, like face-to-face communication? I don't mean in office, but like live call communication, or has it only been via messages on Discord, email, whatever? Like, have y'all been able to, as a group, have that have a conversation to really sort of help present what you're trying to do, or is it just faith in
great
people reading it correctly?
Because up to this point, we have had conference calls and stuff like that, but for the first time, based on, because we did give them the first draft of this this document just so that they could be prepped for it, etc. I do things like that. Just, I think, I don't want to be in a place where we're surprising them with documents and they, you know, they start to see it as aggressive. And B, I also want to prep them so that the response to it doesn't take 2 months.
Yeah.
You know, so they have had the document for about 2 weeks, at least the first draft of it, the same thing I showed you. We've changed it after we talked to everybody, but they came back to me and they're setting up a meeting with the team and the and us, so that we can present the document to them. I'm not 100% sure in the wording exactly who is going to be there. It sounds like, you know, an amalgamation of the teams and maybe some execs. I'm not quite sure. Sevi, what was the exact wording?
They said different stakeholders and the player experience people, and the player experience people is who we've generally been dealing with.
Right.
So for us, we feel like that means it's more than just the devs that we have been directly corresponding with, and possibly people from different departments, maybe Cerebro and Archangel, not sure, but more outside of just the whole community management, player experience people, and you know, like a much farther reach.
Yeah, and again, as far as the changes that you all are looking to get implemented into the game, it's you know, I just sort of want to reiterate based on my understanding of everything that you're doing, because you know, we've had long conversations via you know, me waiting for you to respond and phone calls. And you know, my biggest concern when I saw the letter was, bro, this is a lot of information.
You and everybody else.
Oh my God. I was,
you know, the great thing is that's not how Scopely took it.
yeah.
They actually told me that they appreciated the document and it was well received.
Yeah.
And they thought it was well thought out. They thought that it was very detailed. And the person who we mainly give it to, he expressed that concern. He was like, I don't know if they'll read it when I give it to them. But he came back and told me, hey, they really went through the whole thing. They read it. They you know, a lot of the, you know, a thing that he said was that the way that we structured it, a lot of that data is stuff that's what they do. Like they look at data all the time. So it's something that was right in their wheelhouse. And, you know, like I said, we struggled with, should we make it an easy, simple letter again, or should we go all out? And you know, actually, I'll give the credit to BetaRayBill, because my timeline on the Players Council was a lot longer. Like, I wanted to establish a couple letters of communication and establish that we were a stable, you know, a stable force in the players movement. And he was like, no, let's do this now. So that's when we changed the whole thing, at least, and was like, okay, let's let's do the whole enchilada now and just ask for what we're asking for.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess the concern that I see, and I think a lot of other people see, is when we see an extreme problem, we get an overreaction from Scopely. So you know, there's a problem, and then we're screaming there's a problem, and as opposed to fixing the problem or tweaking it back, we get extreme overcompensations, and I'll sort of example. Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer's launched into the game, little to no testing, and we've got a massive power leap. It's one thing for these types of games to have a power creep, like that's expected. But when there's a massive power leap in teams, you can't roll that back. And so you get this extreme overcompensation, and that sort of puts us into the position where we're at today, where there's not player adjacency, because now you have to buy the new team to solve the new problem. Whereas before, it was just, this is a lot harder than it should be. I sure wish we had something better, and we ended up getting symbiotes, right? Like,
well, so don't you think that is 100% by design? I remember in my head, I don't know if you guys remember the blog, where they pretty much told us what they were going to do. They said that they wanted to make it so that skipping any tune was not acceptable to the gameplay. I didn't quite understand what they meant when they said that, because remember, up to that point, you could skip a team here and there. You could, put together a couple Apex tunes and make a raid team that worked, and after that was just not the case.
Honestly, I don't. I remember them saying that, but I don't think they did it intentionally, because at the end of the day, the people that spend are going to spend. The people that spend big are going to spend big. But the free-to-play are the free-to-play, and there's not a big difference there. And those cheap-to-play players, the Dolphins and Baby Whales and whatnot, they are also less inclined to really go all in on new characters, and that's where they try to strategically purchase. Right? The Dolphins and Baby Whales are those that try to strategically purchase. And I don't think you make them spend more by forcing them to. I think you run them away, in my opinion.
I think one of the issues, if you look at the evolution over time, it's funny, we don't talk about character synergy anymore. Remember back in the early days, we would sit there and talk about this character has to be aligned with this character because of the synergistic relationships in the game that they're derived from. And then we moved to, like Ev was talking about, where we got into a much more theory crafting mode where, gosh, I remember back when Hand Sentry was a fun tune to play with, and you'd put that in war defenses. And
I don't.
And
I don't
so,
remember
that. It was a long time ago. But so we've progressed out of that, and then we moved into this mode of creating a problem and then selling a team to solve the problem. The problem is we've moved now into creating a problem, selling a team to solve the problem, but that team in fact creates another problem.
Yeah.
So then there's another team coming to solve that problem, but that team in fact creates yet another problem. And we're sort of spiraling out of control right now. And Sevi, on a call we did earlier today, used the example with Alliance Wars right now, where you've got, Gamma was a problem, Darkhold was a problem, Black Order's now become a problem, and Nowhere's about to be a big problem.
Yeah.
And you don't really have the roster bandwidth, even at the top levels, to deal with all of that. And that's creating this level of frustration, right? So now you factor on top of that, we talk about this thing about agency and the lack of theory crafting anymore. So, one of the things that Scopely's done is, unfortunately, they're very reactionary. And one of the things that we want to do with this movement and the Players' Council specifically is pivot them into a proactive mode as opposed to a reactionary mode. So basically, let's head these things off in advance before they become a bigger issue that they now have to in turn solve and create other problems as a result of that. Yeah. So you take all those issues and then wrap around that the fact that, I know Dark Dimension 5 had some issues with it where people, you know, they were given traits that you would build characters for. And some people took characters in there, I won't mention names, aim assaulter, that were just bad ideas, right?
Yeah.
But they were cheap, and it worked for some people, but they heard a lot of flack back from that as a result. And so the unfortunate thing, and that's what I really want this council to help Scopely do, is to stop pendulum swinging from one extreme to another, right?
Yeah.
And so you go from carte blanche, just trait-based modes that you have to figure out what characters you want to take in, to we just all lived through a year-long saga of apocalypse scourges and sagas, to where we all had to build the same 23 characters. So we took away that freedom, that theory crafting. Now, normally in the past, that pendulum would have sort of swung back more towards the other side, or maybe in the middle. But the problem is, you look at other game modes like Crucible now, where that mode of operation, unfortunately, is continuing to carry forward, where we've got room-specific meta. We've got Black Order is now a very specific meta in war that's been buffed and boosted. And this is what's creating massive frustration levels amongst the player base.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can't, you know, I can say myself and a number of the other envoys have expressed frustration with the lack of anything to do on Twitch or on YouTube, because, you know, everyone knows I'm overly excited about Cosmic Crucible, but a continuation of the previous season does not get me excited. And so it's been very difficult to come on and stream during the week and do the community Crucible thing, literally doing the exact same thing for the last 4 months now. And I got 2 more months of looking forward to this crap. And so it's difficult to make content for, and you know, I view myself as more of an entertainer than a creator, but it's difficult to make content for something that is literally the exact same day in and day out for months and months and months and months and months. Like the only thing that changes are the characters. You know, we get a new team that takes care of the problem that the old team created.
Yeah, we have to also hope that they're willing to listen as well, because, I mean, I guess maybe they have things in motion, but I know when they did the tournament, which I thought was amazing. I thought
so
the
much fun.
tournament, the way that they put that tournament together was amazing. And they told us they were going to go back to the old format, and we were like, no, wait, like why? Like why would you do that? Like everybody's telling you this is amazing, and they're like, well, it's already in the works. We already have the format. And I said, well, why don't you just keep the tournament as this season and work on something for the next season? And, you know, to me, that makes so much sense. I mean, regardless of whether you have something coming or not, we're telling you this works.
Yeah, that part is amongst the most confusing things I've ever seen. You've got something that is a huge win with the community, and your response is, well, that's just not what we planned. Change your plans.
Holy crap.
Like that's it.
In essence, what the 32-person Crucible did, in a way, was what PvP should have done. And most people don't even know about that game mode, right? But take a mode where basically you had carte blanche freedom to be creative in what you wanted to challenge your opponent with. Granted, this was, you know, 6 teams instead of a singular match, but still conceptually it's very similar. And the problem is, and this is one of the things we were talking about earlier today, is that unfortunately what happens is they take game modes that people really are positive about, and then they tweak them and they get them to a point where you start feeling not good about it again, right? And I know Alliance Wars has become that way for many people, where that used to be the one thing that kept them. And CC was the second mode that sort of really was doing that. And 32-person CC sort of reinvigorated that. And then this conveyor belt CC as a follow-on, I think, sort of burst that bubble a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's you know, so I think if there's any feedback that I could give you all with the players group is don't settle for we've already got plans, because anybody that's ever owned a business or ran a business, regardless of the industry, gaming is no different, knows that change can happen, and it can happen quickly if there's enough incentive. And I think there's it's about selling yourself and selling what that incentive is. And for the longest time, you know, it's one thing to complain about something, but it's another to come with receipts and to come with facts of why things can be better and why things need to improve, and if that happens, what's going to happen on the back end.
I
so
think that
get your receipts together.
I think if they had kept that Crucible, I don't know if they see it, like since the new Crucible started,
yeah,
I've lost about four or five players. Just not mainly because of the Crucible, but just they got to a point where there's like nothing is fun in this game anymore.
No. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Had that Crucible still been there, at least there would have been a little hope. Maybe I would have lost 2 players. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people have stayed around for just one good, you know,
absolutely
mode. You know, but when there's 0 modes that you're interested in,
yeah.
I used to tell people, when you go out and play golf and you have 18 holes to play, and if you're not on the pro circuit, right, you might have a bad round, but there's what we call the golfer's curse. Inevitably, there'll be one hole that you'll have an incredible shot on, or you'll, you know, make par on it, or what have you, and you'll be feeling so pumped that you just want to come back out there and do it again. You could have 17 trash holes, but that one is what brings you back, and that's called the golfer's curse. And that's the issue that they got to be careful of here, is you can't lose that one thing that keeps bringing people back, that they're super positive about and excited about.
Yeah, I think you know, and Beta, you're a prime example. You know, when I got to Pants of Hulk, you're like, I'll be here until I'm not, and then you're on Community Crucible, yucking it up with all of us idiots. So it worked for a while. Now we just got to figure out a way to get everybody to relight and reignite that passion. And it's, you know, this game is fun, and it's got a lot of cool stuff, and it's got some of the most beautiful artwork of any game around.
Well, the artwork is excellent in this game.
I've never heard anybody complain about the artwork in this game.
Well, Dazzler's eyes, but that's
and Hulk is too short.
Or Tiny Hulk. But those are pretty great complaints. Like that's the only thing we attack the art team over. Oh yeah, and at one point something was wrong with She-Hulk's throat, I think, or neck, or I don't know.
I think it was Hulk's neck.
All right, so
there was none.
So we've been talking for a long time. I apologize for keeping y'all this long, but you know I wanted to try and cover everything as best I could. You know, I know y'all are sort of making rounds with various CCs, and you've covered top 5s and bottom 5s, and I just wanted to try and cover all that in between. Is there anything that you guys want to share before we get out of here? Last thoughts?
I would like to share the fact that one of the things I still want to do, even though we have a lot of movement from the devs, I still want to hope that the community gets behind just making their voice heard. We're going to do a hashtag movement next week, and I would definitely love as many alliances to be involved as possible. You know, the more visible this thing is, the less likely they can ignore it. And not just ignore it, but the more likely they are to come back with a solution that works, as opposed to, you know, a Band-Aid for a gunshot wound. Like I hope that people, you know, just get behind this and see where it goes.
Yeah.
The hashtag movement was pretty successful last time. I think we had about 2/3 of the top 100, and several, like, just so many people throughout the rest of the boards. that Scopely actually reached out to Ev and I separately and were like, hey, what's going on with this? Like, you know, it caught their eye. They wanted to know, and even though we told them it was going to happen, I don't think that they thought it was going to be as prevalent as it was.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So, well, just so keep in mind that we've got approximately 55 days before we can do take a day off. So I'm not sure what 55 days is from today, but I think that's when you'll get the most excited movement to be able to do something more extreme than just deliver a message. But with that being said, let's hope it doesn't get to that. Let's hope they hear the message and they actually make this, make the right steps in saving the game that we all love and enjoy playing.
Well, all indicators show that they, like I said, they've been very aggressive in reaching out to us and letting us know that they are paying attention and they're actually trying to get ahead of it and move. I actually haven't handed them the final document yet because I put it out to the community first, but I will hand it to them tomorrow, just so that, because they said they want to be able to look at that final document and make sure that all the things that they're trying to do and answer are correct. So there is a lot, I'm very hopeful about this second phase.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate each and every single one of y'all. It's been a pleasure getting to know y'all and hanging out with y'all, and look forward to seeing how this movement continues to grow and what's coming next. So,
thanks
be sure
for having us.
Yeah, thanks. Be sure to like and subscribe, people. Thanks. Remember that you're pretty, you're smart, and you're special. I love you all very much. I don't know how to close this thing out. All right, where's my little transition thingy? Oh, we got subs. Let's go. Greatest closing transition ever. Let's talk about it. Brought to you by Squatty Potty and OnlyFans. Be sure to like and subscribe.